everyone, and welcome to Reigniting Small Business, the SBI podcast. I'm Laura Richards, and today we're going to talk to Patrick Lee, CEO of SBI and also author of The Great Small Business Plateau and How to Blast Past It. Hi, Patrick. How are you?
I'm good. How are you, Laura?
I'm doing well. Nice to have you today again on your video podcast.
Glad to be here.
You get to sit in the interviewee chair today, Patrick.
I'm actually going to change that up a little, Laura, and I'm going to stand in the interviewee spot today.
All right. Well, good. I like you standing. You're very animated that way. So it'll give everybody a bird's eye look at you when you're presenting this material to a group. So today we want to talk about the Great Small Business Plateau. And I think the first question we want to ask you and where we want to start here is, as a small business owner who is feeling like they might be plateaued or their business is stalled, what's the very first question you have to ask yourself to determine if it's the phenomenon we call the Great Small Business Plateau?
Okay. I think there's a couple of things you start with. The very first thing is you need to identify what's your intention with your business. I think a lot of folks, I will go into a room and I will ask people, are you a growth business or are you a lifestyle business? And invariably, most folks, when I say, are you a growth business, raise their hand. So after we do this little exercise, I'll take a pause and I'll go ahead and give a definition. And, I'll say, okay, here's what growth is. A growth business is a business that is constantly reinventing itself. It is constantly adding capacity, adding infrastructure, adding personnel. It is trying to grow at rates of, 20, 25, 50, maybe 100% over and over and over again. It is on a trajectory to be exponentially larger than it is in some period of time than what it is at that moment. Lifestyle business is a business where you've grown up to a certain size. That size allows the owners to take out the money necessary to live the lifestyle that they want to live. It allows them to pay their vendors and their employees and advertise and conduct business at a level that is comfortable. It provides them with what they need. And there may be some growth. There's some new clients. There's attempts to grow a little bit. But that idea that you are reinventing, that you have infrastructure that is constantly expanding and that you are constantly having to reinvent entirely your process and what you're selling and how you're scalable, that's not there. It's a much calmer, it's a much more supporting of an understood status quo. When I then explain that and then go back and ask, a lot of the hands that were up for growth business go down and a whole bunch of hands come up for lifestyle.
Well, one of the things I've noticed is that it seems to me that a lot of business owners feel like they shouldn't say they're a lifestyle business. There seems to be some stigma. Everybody seems to think that they're supposed to say, oh yeah, I want to grow, like I'm a growth business. Do you find that?
Absolutely. And part of that is not just the stigma of lifestyle. Saying lifestyle business makes people, I think like lazy or we're not really doing anything or we don't want to improve. But that's not really what it means. It means the goal is to support an understood lifestyle, not for growth. I think the other thing that happens with that is we're taught a bunch of business myths that just somehow seep in from somewhere. I'm not even sure where we get them. And one of those is that thing that if you're not growing, you're dying. I mean, everybody's already heard that. If you're not growing, you're dying. You got to keep up with this. You got to be growing or you're dying. That's maybe true in a like, yes, if you don't keep up with inflation or a standard of living increase, or, if you don't add enough so you can give your employees raises, and if you're not conscious of that things are changing and you're not keeping up with those changes, you could be in some sort of trouble. But that's not the type of growth we're talking about. We're not talking about appropriate growth to maintain for when you lose some clients or one of your products or services is no longer as valuable, or your people now have been with you for 10 years and what you have to pay them to keep them is much more than when they were there for their first year. I mean, those kind of things are built in, but that's not that's not the type of growth that we're talking about. So a lot of times what I like to do is I like to say, there's growth and there's accelerated growth, right? So what we're talking about here is accelerated growth, not maintenance growth, not, okay, we've grown about 4% this year, or maybe we grew 10% and then next year we grow 8%. That's maintenance growth.
That makes perfect sense. Well, so say we've identified that my business is on the small business plateau. Why does a business want to engage somebody to help them get off it? Why can't they just move past the plateau on their own?
So here's what happens with the business and how you end up on a plateau and why it matters. Because a lot of times folks will say, well, okay, I'm at this plateau. I've been here, I guess I'll just settle. Technically, if you're on the plateau, it's non-sustainable. So here's what happens. A business starts up. There's an idea, there's a concept, you start putting together your infrastructure, you start selling, you've got revenue coming in, there's clients, you've got vendors, you're actually performing. Now you're a going concern, right? So we're on that road. What happens with businesses is by the sheer nature of becoming a real business, getting revenue, you start growing. And as you grow, the business starts shooting up. It becomes more real. You hire some people, some things start happening, more clients come in. It's happening. Most business owners don't plot where they should be. They haven't asked that question of growth versus lifestyle. They haven't asked, what is the capacity of this business? What numbers should we be at in order to be able to maximize our systems and where we're at? What they're basically doing is they're going, okay, hey, this is working. Here's some revenue. People are calling. Let's just keep going. And so they will shoot up. The business will shoot up. It'll grow initially, very dramatically. Along that path, there's a spot called an equilibrium point. And that spot is where the business as designed, the systems as designed, would be at their most efficient. In other words, they're the most profitable. They work the best. It's a cash cow place. We figured out how to build a business where at this level of clientele, at this level of system delivery, we're at our highest profit. Now, most folks are unaware that even exists. And the momentum of starting up and calls are still coming in and we're still trying to grow. And we never realized that there was a stopping point. So we just keep growing. So we go past that. We shoot past the equilibrium point and we shoot up to a point where all of a sudden it becomes very difficult for the business to stay there. It starts being painful. It's like you're doing all kinds of initiatives, but you stop growing. And it feels like there's some pressure pushing down on you, like we're not even able to maintain where we're at, but we never wanted to stop growing. So a whole bunch of money is put into, okay, let's try this. Let's buy a new piece of equipment. Let's hire some new people. Let's market. Let's do this, right? So there's a big attempt to push up again, but it inevitably doesn't work. Like you go up a little, you come down. You go up, you come down. And the business owner is looking at this going, I don't understand. Why have we stopped? I seem to hover around this revenue level, this particular plateau. I'm hovering there. No matter what I do, I can't get past it. Well, here's the thing. Because there was so much effort to stay, we call it a churn point. You're at this point where you're just sort of churning. You're up, you're down, you're up, you're down. You do this goes over. You work over here, this falls off. And so you're doing that. Well, there's a lot of money that's been put into maintaining the organization at a spot that it doesn't want to be. It wants to fall to its equilibrium point. Okay. So, but no owner wants to say, hey, I'm voluntarily going to back off of how far I've gotten, right? Revenue's king for most small businesses. Like, wow, I reached 1.5 million. Why would I allow myself to drop back to 1.1 million or 900,000, right? That's not there. So there's this idea that we have to stay there. Plus, all those initiatives we were doing to either grow beyond that or to stay there are now things that we have to pay for. So there's certain revenue levels that we have to be at to even have the right revenue to pay those bills. So for instance, you bought a new piece of equipment, okay? You thought that was going to take you to the next level. It doesn't. You still owe on that equipment, on that lease. And at $900,000 of revenue, you don't even have enough revenue to support the lease for that piece of equipment. So you're like, we have to be at 1.5 because I don't even know how to pay this. Well, guess what? You're eating up your profit. You're eating up your resources trying to keep yourself at that churn point. So that churn point is not a permanent place you can live. You are either going to need to change and become more efficient, find a way to be at that equilibrium point, or you're going to have to change your systems. You're going to have to sort of radically alter your business so that it can grow beyond that churn point. Because at some point, you're going to start not even having the resources to affect change, and you're going to run out of money. You're going to become an unprofitable business.
Wow. That's a lot. You just gave us a lot of information right there. And I think for the business owner listening, probably a lot of us can identify our businesses at different points being somewhere in that spectrum that you just described. Maybe where people can't see their businesses, and what you should explain next is what happens when you successfully meet that call for new systems and you start to slingshot around the other side of this thing. What does that look and feel like?
Well, this is the part that becomes really hard for a business owner. And frequently when we work with folks who are plateaued, what we end up finding is that they've been trying to get off of this plateau on their own for a very long period of time. This is not usually something that they just one day wake up and say, I feel plateaued. It's usually that they felt plateaued for 2, 3, 4, 5 years. Some folks have come to us plateaued at like 15 years. Now, technically, you'd say that's not really a churn point, but they've not been able to get past a certain level. Most churn points are folks in that 3, 4, 5 year place where they are recognizing that this business is no longer as profitable as it once was for them. They're burnt out. They're struggling. They don't understand why this is so hard now when it was fun and there was growth before. And so what ends up happening is when we show them this, we say, look, here's what the situation is. You need a whole different set of systems and capacity if you want to grow. Where you are now, just tinkering with what you have, adding one person, changing this one thing up, it's not enough to affect the capacity of your business to allow it to continue on that growth path it was before. So you're going to have to change up. They say, okay, so how does that work? What do we need to do? We say, well, it's going to be radical change. We're going to really have to look at changing your infrastructure, changing your systems, doing things very, very different. Well, if it was a nice straight walk from our systems as they exist now across the plateau to new systems, and by gosh, we can grow, everybody would do it. The problem is, if you think about radical change has damage associated with it, right? Not all of your employees are up for radical change. A lot of people don't like change. In fact, most people don't like change. So here we are doing radical change. Some employees are going to quit. You're going to have to hire new employees. There's going to be new systems, new ways of doing things. There's going to be new programs you have to learn, new technology you have to learn, new methods you have to learn. That is inefficient. That costs money. You have to fuel that. So what happens is you don't walk across like this. You actually drop down and you come back up. So that idea that drop down is the scary thing for the business owner, right? You're jumping off a cliff and you're trusting that you're going to go whoosh and shoot back up. It's the most critical decision and critical point of getting off of a plateau, because the business owner who doesn't understand that, and I've had many who say to me things like, I like everything you're saying. I understand what it is. I know where we are. I'm going to skip that whole dip thing. I think we're just going to slide right across. And I'm like, you're not going to. And they're like, no, I think we can. They never can. The truth is, some the dip is less, some the dip is more, but the dip always comes. It's built into this. So that, unless you're highly capitalized, which most businesses on a plateau are not, or at a churn point are not, but unless you're highly capitalized and you can afford, you may not feel the dip, but it's still there. So that's the first choice being made here. Do I have it in me? The problem is those owners who say yes, and they jump off, and then they feel that whoosh, I'm going down, they get terrified, right? Like, oh my gosh, this is, I don't like this. This isn't working. I don't trust this anymore. I don't think we're going to get there. And they try to scramble back up the side of that curve and go back to where they were. Because that, at least I understood. This is just freaking me out. You can't go back. Once you open Pandora's box, it's open. You can't close it. You can't go back. You don't go back to the same thing. It doesn't work that way. So before somebody jumps off that cliff to slingshot their way up, we have to benchmark everything. And we have to make sure there's a clear understanding of that owner. Look, we're telling you it's going to feel painful. This is not going to be a simple thing. Do not try to trick yourself into, oh, I'm not worried about it, I'll be fine. You're going to have moments of incredible doubt when you go through this process. We benchmark this for you so you can make sure that as you're going down this here, you don't go woof and fall off the cliff, right? It does slingshot. And we benchmarked it because the worst thing you can do is try to crawl back up to where you jumped from.
And Patrick, you and I have talked many times about some of the cautionary tales we have, some examples of clients we've worked with to great success and otherwise. So for those of you listening who are on the edge of your seats, like I am right now, saying, wow, this sounds really interesting. I think I might be here and I might benefit from learning about some people who've already been here. You'll have that opportunity if you tune in to the SBI podcast Thursday at 3:00. We'll have some of those examples for you. That said, Patrick, we have about 3 plus a little bit of minutes left. To the folks listening today who maybe see their businesses in this small business plateau conflict, what advice do you have for them in terms of any of the things we've talked about, getting help, finding out more? What say you?
Well, I think there's a couple of things. If you're interested in what we're saying, you want more details, we have a YouTube channel, and you should check out the YouTube channel. There is about a 3-hour presentation that we made to a group of business owners that was filmed, and it gives a whole lot more in depth around this. And so if you go to YouTube, please become a subscriber. You can look at this and get a lot more about this, because there's inhibitors, there's all sorts of things that attach with the Great Small Business Plateau. The one thing I will say to everybody is this: it's not, if you're not going to change up your systems for growth, and you say, I'm going to go back to the equilibrium point. The equilibrium point, getting back down to it, is almost the exact same process as switching up your systems for growth. There's a dip, there's a bunch of challenges. It's difficult to just retrofit. So the one thing that everybody needs to sort of have in their head here is if we're at a churn point, we're going to have to change. That means we're going to have to pick a path that isn't super comfortable. And to do that well, have somebody who is experienced with guiding business through this help you do it. It's impossible for a business owner to go through the fear and the decision making and all of that just in their own heads. Because if you wake up at 3 a.m. and you're terrified of this whole thing, the decisions you make the next morning when you've had no sleep and you're terrified are not necessarily good decisions. So having an accountability agent, having somebody who can chart this for you, I think that's essential.
Well said. I hope that this was valuable information for those out there listening to the podcast today. As Patrick said, do check out the Great Small Business Plateau on the Spark Business Institute YouTube channel. We'll be back on Thursday with more. And if you really want to get the full skinny on the Great Small Business Plateau and how to blast past it, you can find the book at Amazon.com. So thanks for tuning in today, and we'll see you again soon. Bye-bye.